Okay. Tzidkas Hatzadik, ois pei. We began, and I want to continue in it. It's complex. So let's just go over the Reb Tzadok says, Tikkun lachas shinui makom, that the best tikkun or the tikkun for a person who has anger problems, lakas, is shinui makom, is changing your location from one place to another, shinui makom. And then he brings a proof, and this is where we begin, K'maisha Amra Torah, because it says right in the Torah, Golus l'roitzeach, that if somebody murders somebody accidentally, b'shogeg, and we explained last week, I don't want to elaborate on it too much this week, but we explained that there's three types of shogeg. The Gemara and the Rambam point out three kinds of killing somebody by accident. One way is, there's many scenarios. You get in a car accident, you fall off a ladder, fall onto somebody, many scenarios, friendly fire. So the Rambam makes three distinctions. Distinction one, if it's shogeg karev lamezid, if it was almost a mazid, I didn't mean to hit him, I just, So that doesn't go to gullus. Meaning that guy gets tried, presumably, what happens to him. But the goal is karev lamezid. A shogeg karev laones, if it's like had nothing to do with him, it just happens to be that somehow he killed somebody, also doesn't go to gullus. So the only case of a shogeg b'ritzicha that runs away to gullus is someone who was not an ones and not a mazid, but as the Rambam says, not careful enough. You're just not careful enough. You were reckless. So since you were reckless, that person goes to gullus. Now this recklessness indicates, seemingly, that you don't value human life enough, that you weren't careful enough. That seems to be. I pointed out last week, we don't find kas in this scenario here at all. What's it going to do with kas? Yet Reb Tzadok says that the tikkun for kas is galus, just like we see a rotzeach b'shogeg, category B goes into an ar miklat, which is a form of galus. I want to point out that ar miklat has two parts to it, both of them clear in the Torah. Part one is that it protects the person from the goel adam. It's for the person's own protection from the person who's rightly agitated about this because he killed his next of kin and you weren't careful enough, so you might run after him. You go into the Ari Miklat. But the other part of it is, which is also clear, is that it's a tikkun. It's a kapara, it's a tikkun. The Rambam spells this both out in Hilchos Rotzeach. It helps the person rehabilitate. So that's tikkun lakas golus. The person wasn't in kas. So explained last week, probably the pshat is, and the more I think about it, the more I think this is the right pshat, that there's a family called ritzicha. There's a category called murder. And the murder, loy sirtzach, is, as the Rambam says, there has to be some element of not uncarefulness, of recklessness here. But the category of murder has as a subcategory or a side category, the category of kas. It's all one thing. So much so that the Zohar says clearly that there's really two big averas when it comes to ben amlach avera, violating somebody else's rights. There's lo sinaf and lo sirtzach. The em roish kol amidos, the Zohar says. One comes from Yishmael, one comes from Esav. But the idea is there's two categories in big time sin. We're not talking about kabedes avicha v'simecha, or not believing in God. We're talking about the second side of the luchos habris. Two major categories. One of them is do not kill, and one of them is do not covet or let loose with your taiva. The Rav Tzadok's going to explain in a minute. Those two are opposites, one from the other. The two different kinds of people. But what you have here is that there's the type of person which is angry and murderous or not caring enough about a person's life, just being reckless with other people. This could include, somebody said last week, I think, this could include, just being mavayish somebody barabim also. It's a recklessness, it's a carelessness that's going on, but that all goes under the category of lois sirtzach. That's why I'm mavayish pnei chaver, I'm malbim pnei chaver barabim, so it's like a ritzicha. You're in the lois sirtzach category. The lois sinaf category is a different category, which we're going to discuss. That's where, not that I'm careless about you, I'm just too careful about me. That's what lois sinaf means. Like I just need to, so now this can go from a kind of regular baltaiva, which we all are, or go to complete narcissism, where a person is just only cares about themselves, And but that goes into lois sinaf. I'll do whatever I need to do to accomplish the taiva or that I have at this moment. I need to eat, I need to be with this woman, I need to be with this man, whatever the case might be, whatever your taiva could be. I was thinking somebody has a taiva for ritzicha, so that's like an interesting, there's like a combination of two of the asaris hadibrais. But let's keep it easier to understand, categorized. And what we have categorized is lois sirtzach and lois sinaf. Lois sirtzach goes under the category or in the category of kas. So now, once even it comes out, this is the chiddush, that even a person is rotzeach b'shogeg, I didn't mean to kill you, but you're still in the lois sirtzach kas category. I think we'll be able to explain this more in a minute, just looking mamash at the sources. But you're still in that category. And if it was complete onus, you're not in that category. But if just something happened, that was totally out of your control, there was no carelessness involved. But once there's some carelessness, you're in the lois sirtzach category. That's what Rav Tzadok is saying here. Now, to continue where we were, ubegilad, you have there os pei, please. Uvegilad ushchem tishchichi roitzchem hirbu are miklat. K'moshe amru b'makas tes amud beis. So there's an area of Gilad, and there's an area of Shechem. And in both of those places, the Gemara reports in Gemara Makas Tes Amud Beis, Shchichi Roitzchem. It's the hood. Like you don't, like these places, there's a lot of Ritzicha in these places. It's terrible, no? A lot of Ritzicha, you go to B'nai Menashe. So Gilad, just wanted to point out, I just printed out for you today from the encyclopedia. Like Gilad is an area, it's Transjordan, right? So like if you cross from the Yam HaMelech down here to the Kinneret, so that's on the Averly Yarden, that's all called Hagilad. It's not a little city someplace. And most of it, of the Hagilad, was taken over by Shevet Menashe. So that's the whole story of, they were Averly Yarden, and they said, this is where we want to live. And this is where they lived, and there was a lot of Ritzicha in Menashe. And Shechem was also a makam, the Kever Yosef, that's a makam, the Gemara calls it makam muchan leperonius, in general. But there's something about the energy of Shechem which is frightening. Now, what's important to note here is that Gilad is in Shevet Menashe, and Shechem is in Shevet Ephraim. So here's your no-go zone, which were both Bnei Yosef. So it's interesting and important to note that somehow or another, where there were Bnei Yosef, Ephraim and Menashe, and that's where they lived, you have Shchiach Ritzicha. Taiva not, right? Taiva, Yosef was an ace. But nor do we find, as far as I can remember, we don't find by Yosef kas.
Yeah, looks like he mastered kas because he didn't get angry at his brothers.
So that means he had kas. I mean, might mean. I don't know, Clar, that we know that he mastered Taiva.
Does that mean he had Taiva?
Hmm?
He mastered it, does that mean he had it?
I don't know. But that clear is Pashat Bakra. You know, Chazal elaborate on how much Taiva he was able to be kovesh. I mean, this wasn't just a pasuk in the Torah. This like a story that the Ashes Potiphar came and approached him. This was, Chazal say, day after day, minute after minute. She changed her clothes multiple times a day to be able to attract him. Unbelievable that he was omed on this and apparently got stronger in it, Chazal say. But he was kovesh. This didn't mean anything to him. He got to a point where he was above Taiva, and she was a beautiful woman, and there was also a shamayim part of it, as you see later on in the story. So it was even a ruchnius that with the who he married at the end. But but he mastered Taiva, but kas apparently not, which we need to discuss. And this transferred over through all the generations. Of course, Menashe and Ephraim, Shevet Menashe and Shevet Ephraim, was after we came into Eretz Yisrael, after we did the wars in Eretz Yisrael, and in the time of Yoshua ben Nun. And then, Al Pi Tzavos, Moshe Rabbeinu, they were allowed to come back to Menashe, to Shevet Menashe. But what were they so angry about? Like Menashe and Ephraim, these were angry people. Angry people, because we're talking about angry people, and therefore, says the Gemara makes a comment, ad kedei kach, that you had a unbalanced amount of arei miklat in this area of Menashe, as many there as you had in the whole Eretz Yisrael. Meaning, like, where do you need a lot of doctors where there's a lot of sick people? Where do you need a lot of jails where there's a lot of convicts? So where do you need a lot of arei miklat? Shevet Menashe. You had also in Eretz Yisrael, but it was an unusual amount, an unbalanced amount. The Gemara tells you the numbers of where they were and exactly where they were. So this was a big problem of Ritzicha in Menashe. Now, let me just take this a little bit further. Yeah, everybody with me? So what? Yeah. So, one second.
We see that Bnei Yosef constantly, the Nebuah from the brothers, are worried about Avodah Zarah by his kids. And we see Chazal
by Yosef's kids.
By Yosef's kids all throughout Jewish history. And Ka'as, we see Chazal associated with Avodah Zarah in its extreme form.
Good. You also see Kas because the brothers were Choshesh, weren't they? The brothers were Choshesh that Menashe, and the Chazal Menashe was going to kill them. In other words, Yosef was Misapek, but Menashe Ben Noisam was going to kill them. So
even later, when Yaakov died, they were afraid that
they were going to kill him.
His wrath would come out.
Yeah, I'm saying you see some anger there, but it really came out somehow in Menashe. Somehow we see that it came out. The Gemara, by the way, brings a pasuk, which is Kedai to know in Hosea. The Gemara says, Hosea said, Hosea talks about giving musar to Menashe. Al-ken chatzavti banavim haraktim beimrei fi umishpatecho aryetze ki chesed chafatzti v'lo yisach. The main pasuk, Gilad, that's the whole area that we're talking about over here. Kiryas poyale oven. That's what Hosea says. Kiryas poyale oven. Akuba midam. Rashi says, Akuba midam. Milea orve, with an aleph, orve ritzicha. In Bracious, yeah. Milea orve ritzicha, with an aleph. Okay. So this is where the Gemara learns that there was an abundance of Arei Miklat in Menashe. Comes the Ramban and asks your kasha, which should be obvious to everybody. What did you need Arei Miklat in Menashe? Over there, the Ritzicha that Hosea was talking about, clearly, Po'alei Oven, talk about Ritzicha b'Mezid. So I'm talking about Ritzicha b'Mezid. I mean, they killed people. For whatever reason, they killed people, but they killed people. So the Ramban asks, what should be the obvious question is, so if you kill somebody b'Mezid, you don't go to a near miklat. If you don't go to a near miklat, then you don't need a lot of Arei Miklat in Shevet Menashe. So says the Ramban, two answers. I looked up this Ramban inside. A lot of Rishonim weigh in on this question, and Achronim, the Chazon Ish, writes about this in Choshen Mishpah. In Hilchos Chayv L'Mazik, he writes about this. But the Ramban in his first answer says, look, the Arei Miklat were not only for people that were killing b'shogeg, good Judea, they were also for people that killed b'mezid, and there were no edim. Meaning, so, like, if I understand it correctly, I don't want to over-humanize the mitzvah, say time and tekra, but in other words, the Goyal Adam presumably is not going to run after so much the person who killed b'mezid with Edim and Hasra, because he knows he'll be prosecuted in front of the Sanhedrin, and he will get his. Justice will be done. It's the shogeg that he's running after because this guy's getting away with murder. And what about the fellow, says the Ramban, who killed b'mezid, but there's no Edim, so he knows he's not going to be prosecuted in front of a Sanhedrin. There was no Edim, there was no Asra. So he has a din of a shogeg in the sense that he has to be protected from the Goel Adam. So this is the Ramban in the first teretz. Second teretz, which is more Nogei Linyanenu, he said, look, there was a culture of Ritzicha. And yes, people killed b'mezid, but what happened was that since people killed b'mezid a lot in Menashe, was every day in the newspaper that somebody got killed b'mezid, so there was a culture of life is cheap culture. And the life is cheap culture went all the way to not being careful enough about life, not driving carefully, not doing work carefully, just like people die over here, like people get killed over here, no big deal. So there was a lot of, so the first teretz in the Ramban is who's talking about Mezid B'li Eidim. The second teretz in the Ramban is, no, we're talking about Shogeg, but there was more Ritzicha b'Shogeg in Shevet Menashe than there was in the other places. Why? Because there was Ritzicha b'Mezid in Chelik Menashe. Yafa? Okay. So this is what the Chazon Ish elaborates on, and he says that he goes so far as to say that the land wreaked Ritzicha, and how it manifests could be b'Mezid and b'Shogeg. So the Chazon Ish understood this. What I'm saying in my simple understanding is, when life is cheap, life is cheap, and the value of human life is here instead of here. You will have more accidents. You will have more ishmira. But the Chazon Ish says, I just want to, while we're here, halachic point, which is also negaya for us. See, what he learns from all of this is that you don't get golus for killing somebody. You don't go to the Arei Miklat for killing somebody. You go to the Arei Miklat for not being careful enough. That's what the Chazon Ish learns. It brings many nafkaminas halacha. The golus is not a kapara, an oynesh. It is a protection for the hariga, as he puts it, but rather for the izahirus that led to the Ritzicha. So here we have camp. Right, like here's like the Arei Miklat were like boot camp for people that are not careful enough and cheapening people's lives, and they had a whole program going on in Menashe, a little bit in Eretz Yisrael and the rest of Eretz Yisrael. Well, so now let's get to passion. Very good, you're right with me. The question, of course, that we need to ask, and this is what Reb Tzadok is talking about, like as I talk about it, you get used to the idea, yeah, a lot of killing there going on in Menashe. Why? Like, there were such bad people, they're killing people all the time. So, let's read your Rav Tzadok, and then I want to try to explain a little bit. He says that Uvegila Rushchem the Shchicha Reitzchem Hirbuare Mikla Kamashamar B'Makas, as I just explained. Ki Ein Hashem Yisbarach Ba Bitrunya. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not come Bitrunya. What does Bitrunya mean? I once talked about this a lot. But what it means is there's never, hardly ever, I mean, there might be some cases, but there's hardly ever a situation where God asks us to change who we are. That's what it means. Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ba Bitrunya. Work with what you are. It's not our fault that we were created the way we were created. So if you're created an angry man, like if that's who you are, so work with it. But it's not, and we'll give you special camps for this, or a miklat, special cities even, and Levium that are trained in how to deal with people that are not careful enough. But the reason why why we're looking for kapara for these people is because we don't just kill people or just lock them up for life. Hashem needs every different type of person. In there apparently is included Reitzchem, killers.
Well, maybe the person but not the pula.
What?
Maybe the person but not the pula.
Maybe the pula. I mean, I don't know, like, somebody's got to be the executioner.
Gemara talks about it, right? So if somebody needed to die.
No, but that's a different nakuda. It's not this nakuda. Here the nakuda is talking about shoygei. I'm talking about Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ba Bitrunya means that either like you're saying that characteristic has to exist, or even, like God needs a lot of different kinds of people, and one shliach is somebody who's a killer. I don't know. I'm not. Nobody should volunteer for this. But it is interesting that the sort of like ruthlessness, if you will, sometimes has to exist, but it has to be tamed. But there's something in the teva. En Hashem Yisbarach Ba Bitrunya. Me'achar and the Shebeteva HaTeilada Sham Shchicha Reitzchem. It's genetic to them to be killers. There's probably a holy passion there also, says Reb Tzadok. Meaning probably if you go to Menashe, there were a lot of hafganas and matters of passion, matters of passion in a good way. We said last week, they quoted the Gemara in Tainas Daf Hey, that sometimes you'll see this in a base medrash. Hai surber b'rabbanan de kamarasach, laviyu de kamarasach, aloi raisa de kamaraschabe. Or raisa means fire. That's what the word means. So like there's a fire going on in the base of medrash, and they look like they're going to kill each other. But Talmidei Chacham don't kill each other. It's not the right halach. But you do see this rischa de kedusha. You see this rischa de kedusha. You know the famous story about the Kohen that was oila to the mizbeach, and then the other one ran after him, and he killed him. And so, that was passion. That was passion. Now he got lost in the passion, ad kedei kach, that he started to paskin on the knife, tar or tameh, and that's where the Gemara, he was dead when I stabbed him, he wasn't dead when I stabbed him, he started worrying about the details. This is what happens when you get too involved with your passion. You forget about the big picture completely. That's the criticism of the Gemara in that story. But the passion itself, like they're racing up to the Mizbech, they're racing up. So Mistama says, he says, Misvar Sham Shchicha Davar Zeh B'Kedusha Derischa. You probably found a lot of passion in this area. Dahainu, Ir Miklat, and this is what the Ir Miklat is. Dahainu Ir Miklat means this is what the Ir Miklat is for, to tame the passion within us towards positivity. That's what it's for. Ukishabali is pashtus, because if you let it get out of hand, bal l'ritzicha hara. It'll get to really bad places. In other words, if you let this passion get completely out of hand, you will see ritzicha hara. Ultimately, you will have real murderers, bad murderers. So you need to tame the passion. I want to like I meditated on this because we always say it's common to say in yeshivas we're taught that no midah is good and no midah is bad, and you just have to find your midah and work with it. But Ritzicha is like a little bit off the charts, But Ritzicha, the chiddush here is that Ritzicha comes to passion. Chiddush 1 comes from passion. The chiddush 2 is that passion is a great thing, but it can get out of hand. So everything chesed and gevura has to be tamed. It has to be tamed. It has to be trained. Ugilad now, back to our fascinating topic here. Begilad, or really, or fascinating off the topic. Begilad ushchem shneim benachlas Yosef. As I pointed out, this whole Shechem and the whole area, the whole Menashe, both of them are Yosef. Because this is Ritzicha area. This is not Taiva area. In other words, there might have been other places in Eretz Yisrael where, it was red light district. But these areas were not like Sinaf areas, they were like Sirtzach areas. Now, the question that we have to answer is like, why would that be? And I'm sure everybody will come up with the same thing I came up with, but after thought, it occurred to me why it would be, and explains Yosef better. But the Navi Ovadia, let me give you some specs here. The Navi Ovadia is one chapter, and it's 21 psukim. And this was his only nevuah, Chazal say. He was a domi. He was in the Bnei Esav, and he decided to be Oved Hashem. And he wasn't a Navi for a living. The Gemara says it wasn't like it was a full-time Navi. I think Yeshayahu, Yirmiyahu, I think they were full-time Nevi'im. But he protected the Seder Advarim was he protected the Nevi'im, the Bnei Nevi'im from Izevel, and he was zocha to a nevuah. His nevuah, which is often not looked at too much because it was a small nevuah, but it's probably one of the most remarkable nevuahs in the history. I'll just tell you a joke for a second as a break, but if I have a joke about Ovadia, when am I supposed to tell it? Except for now, but there was a famous thing at one time that Rabbi Goren, Olav Shalom, and Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, Olav Shalom, were the two chief rabbis of Israel, right? And Rabbi Goren had written, he was a prolific writer, but he wrote, as was Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. But two big heads, these were two big minds in different ways. But Rabbi Goren wrote a book of poems, and beautiful poems about the modern state of Israel and the history and how this comes alive from the Bible and all that. And he, I think this is where the joke begins. I don't know which part is joke and which part is true. But he recommended or suggested as a chief rabbi that his poems be canonized into the Tanakh. Like we're in a new parsha of the Tanakh, it should be canonized in the Tanakh. So the people told him that you can't just put something in the Tanakh. The Rav knows you can't put something in the Tanakh. You're only allowed to have what is Chavdalet Nevi'im. So you can't have, there's only so many books that you could have in the Tanakh. So he said, so get rid of Ovadia. That's a joke.
Yeah. Ovadia is part of Treyasar, which is counted as one.
Okay, you can't ask kashas on a joke. So, but that's the joke I heard as a kid. Ovadia, fantastic nevuah. We say his psukim every day. Alu Mashim Bar Tzion Lishpoitas Harisa V'Hisa Lashem Amlucha. We say his psukim even where they don't belong. That's at the end of Az Yashir. It has nothing to do with as Yashir per se, and it's there. There are many, many parts of Avadia. If you read it, which is to read it will take 10 minutes, you'll see that it's one of the most familiar nevuas. But the main theme of the Navi Avadia is that is the Milchemes Gog uMagog, and what's going to happen at the end of times. Specifically, what's going to happen with Esav at the end of times. So there's a lot to say about the end of times of where we are in history and like how interesting that is. But that's not what we're doing here. You can do that yourself. But in Avadia, he says. Kikarav Yom Hashem al Kol Hagoyim. This is the Milchemes Gog uMagog. It's called the Yom Hashem. Why is it called the Yom Hashem? Because it's on that day that everyone will recognize that Hashem is the Melech al Kol Haaretz. That's called the Yom Hashem. This is God Day. Yom Hashem. It's Yom Hashem al Kol Hagoyim. He at the beginning, by the way, he says that the Chorban of the Rashi says he was talking about the Chorban Bayis Rishon, the Chorban Bayis Sheni, all of Golos. But then he says, Ki Karav Yom Hashem al Kol Hagoyim Kasher Asisa. And here apparently he turns to the Goyim. Kasher Asisa Yeyase Loch. What you did to the Jews, that's what's going to happen to you. Mulcha Yashuv B'Roishecha. All of the ruthlessness and the Holocaust and the pogroms and everything that you have done, the Golus, to the Jews, it's going to come right back on you, boomerang right back to you. Kikasher shasisem al har kodshi. Shasisem means just like you, Rashi says, conquered har kodshi, the Beis HaMikdash, har Abayis. Yishtu kol hagoyim tamid v'shasav v'lo v'haya kolei hayu b'hartzion tia pleta v'haya kodesh. The Hartzion is going to become rescued, and it will become a Har Kodesh, he prophesies. V'yarshu Beis Yaakov as morashehem, and the time will come that the Beis Yaakov, that be us, are going to inherit the Har Habayis back, and once again, the unthinkable through the times of Golos, that once again, that's going to become Kodesh, the Yarshu Beis Yaakov as Morasheim, and are the Beis Yaakov's legal property and domain. Then, and here's the pasuk that you know, and the pasuk that I wanted to bring in context. V'haya, and at that time, said Avadia, Beis Yaakov Eshu Beis Yosef Lahava, uBeis Esav Lakash. There will come a time that the Beis Yaakov, those from the house of Yaakov, will be considered like fire. Ubeis Yosef, and those from the house of Yosef will be considered like flame. Ubeis Esav Lakash, and those from the house of Esav, they will be like straw. V'dolku bahem va'acholum, Rashi says beautifully here, that the thing with kash is not that you light all the kash. You light one piece of kash, and the whole thing combusts. Everything goes up at one time. So kash is a highly flammable material, and it will keep on going and keep on going. That's what's going to happen. And there will not be even a remnant of the Beis Esav, says Avadia, ki Hashem diber. So saith Hashem. Just while we're here, let's just read it. V'yarshu hanegev as Har Esav, right? Har Negev, Har Seir in the south of Israel, that will become part of the Negev. V'hashfela as Haplishtim. V'yarshu, and the Jewish people will be Yoresh Estei Ephraim, V'estei Shomron, Ubinyamin, interesting, and Sheva Binyamin es Hagilad. Sheva Binyamin es Hagilad. Again, like I'm not trying to be mafarish this with Arut Sheva. I'm just saying this is what the Psukim say. V'golus hachel hazeh libnei Yisrael asher Kananim, and as far as the people that live the soldiers, Hachel, means the soldiers that live in Israel that are Canaanim, we're going to go ad Sarfas. Sarfas doesn't mean France. Sarfas means until Upper Lebanon. Tzaref is in Upper Lebanon. Begolus Yerushalayim asher b'Sfarad, Yershuas Arei HaNegev. So this is going to be occupying, Ovadia predicted, that all of these things, which are various families of the Bnei Esav, etc., it will all end. The Malbim explains that all this is a description of Milchemes Gog uMagog. I'll just read you a line in the Malbim. Oztia Milchemes Gog uMagog. It's at this time, what we're talking about, this new division, if you will, of territory and the Beis Hamikdash. That's all going to be a result of the Yom Hashem, which is the Milchemes Gog uMagog. V'ozia Beis Yaakov Eish, the Malbim, Haboer Mikarov. Ubeis Yosef Yeh Belohava, Haboer Mirachik. So special. What's the difference between an Eish and a Lahava? What's the difference between a fire and a flame? Fire is right here, it's contained on your cooktop, maybe in your pilot. Lahava is flames. The flames is what makes the fire reach out further afield. Says the Malbim.
Means like a pilot light?
Yeah, but you see, a pilot light, I'm just in the metaphor, a pilot light or any contained light is an Eish. But a Lahava is when it starts to go out. So a Lahava is something which is the fire reaching out. The Eish is something which is the fire which may be contained. Once it's a Lahava, very hard, you have to extinguish. It's very hard to contain a Lahava. That's what the Malbim says. So he says as follows, what does this mean? This is a metaphor that Ovadia was saying. What does it mean? It says, Ki Mashiach ben Yosef yaseh chayolas. This will be the time. Remember, Beis Yaakov Eish, Beis Yosef Lahava. What does it mean, Beis Yosef Lahava, says the Malbim? It means that Mashiach ben Yosef is going to do his thing. We all know what Mashiach ben Yosef is, the one who's not necessarily the religious leader of the people of Israel, of the Bnei Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael, but the strategic, military, and tashtit, what's it called in English? The infrastructure, in charge of infrastructure. Yosef went into Mitzrayim, and he became the chief minister of infrastructure and finance and economy. That's what he became. So from Yosef comes this lehava, which the Bnei Yisrael, the Bnei Yaakov didn't have. How interesting is that? In other words, I want to point something out, and I just want to read the Malbim further. Like we're all like confused about the fact that Yitzchak liked Esav so much. There's tirutzim, but it's just kitzayid b'fiv lo matim. Kitzayid b'fiv. I like you. I like your food. Yitzchak Avinu, Yaakov paid a lot of attention to Yosef. Too much. So in his pasim. As I'll say in the Zohar, Pasim, Pei Samach, he taught him Shat and he taught him Sod. And all the Torah that he was Makabel from his Avos taught to Yosef. And also like Soinus Pasim created a jealousy. But probably 50% of Bereshis, Sefer Bereshis, is about Yosef, isn't it? think of the Parshias. It's like Yosef, a little bit about Avraham, hardly nothing about Yitzchak and Yaakov, and then Yosef, and all the way into Shemos. Asher lo yada as Yosef. So it's very interesting. Maybe Pashat, the vision of the Avos was that Yitzchak saw Esav's Ritzicha and Tzayid B'fiv. He's a hunter. He's a go-getter, and he really knows how to work the earth. this guy. And maybe that's, apparently, Havamina, that maybe that's the way the world has to go in order for it to have its tikkun. Like, I need that, I need that kas. But Esav became, and this is what Ovadia is telling us, Esav became an unguarded, an unprotected kas. It turned into Ritzicha Hara. Turned into something bad. Ovadia was from B'nai Esav. He says, no, this is not, it's today, it's like you read these things about, some, Hamasnik doing tshuva, like, oh, they're wrong. Yeah, but Al Pirov, like Esav became, treacherous people, the B'nai Esav, throughout history. So Ovadia goes to get them, but you can understand for a moment why Yitzchak liked him. He thought maybe this is the Asid. Rivka saw something deeper. What did she see? Chazal say she saw Yosef. She didn't just see Yaakov, Ishtam, Yoshev, Olam. She saw the B'nai Yaakov. This is before Chazal. And she saw Yosef, and she said, what you want to accomplish with what she told her husband, in my mind, that what you want to accomplish with Asa, better accomplish with your grandson, Yosef. And look at the end, the brachas to the B'nai Yosef, Ephraim and Menashe. It's just there's almost no other way to read this story, except for that Yaakov favored Yosef. And why did Yaakov favor Yosef? To a fault. He favored Yosef, not that the other B'nai Yisrael weren't important. I guess that's the criticism on him. But Leishan Adam is Banav Ben Abanim. But what he did favor is that he saw that Yosef is going to bring Mashiach ben Yosef. He saw that let me put it in Ovadia words. Yaakov Avinu saw that Ma'yesh needs to become a lahava, and it's not going to happen through Shevet Dan. Levi has a part in it. Shimon has a part in it. We see that. That was in Shechem, by the way, right? That's the other place where there was a lot of Arei Mikla.
Shimon and Levi, they let their anger get out.
So they moved in his mind to the negative side. So it's all such a fascinating back and forth of you need to be angry. Read passion. You need to be passionate, but you got to be very careful when you're opening up a lahava. You don't give the blowtorch to the kid, and it can be very dangerous and it can be very destructive. Till Ovadia gave up on Esav. He was the one in his 21 psukim that he gave up on Esav. Beis Yaakov eish. This is the way it's going to happen. Ubeis Yosef lehava. I was reading this Malbim. Mashiach ben Yosef yasa chayolas. Mipnei shaseres hashvatim lo yiyu adayim kulam beretz Yisrael v'yu ein merachik. Where's the Jews? They're all over the world. They're merachik. There's the 10 lost tribes. No, Yosef. Ubeis Esav yeh kakash asher baharichai eish yochel kash echod es chaveroi. There will be wars between them. It won't even be for the Mashiach ben Yosef to destroy or to create the revenge on those that tortured us. But kash echod es chaveroi. Wow, so it sounds like World War. Yeah, I mean, we're up to nuclear here. Kain, Yabdu zeh ez zeh, says the Malbim, b'molchemes goig, kasher akol yispar b'yecheskel lamed ches, read, see Yecheskel lamed ches, you'll get the whole story, ad shalayeh sarid leves Esav. So this was the prophecy. It was taking a long time to realize this prophecy. From the time of Ovadia, there was the time of Eliyahu Navi and Achav and Izevel, and but look, lo yes sorry lebeis Esav ki Hashem diber. Now, I just want to go to the end over here. The last pasuk in Sefer Ovadia, va'alu Moshiim b'Har Tzion. At that time, alu Moshiim b'Har Tzion lishpait ezhar Esav v'haisa la'Hashem hamalucha. The last words Avadia. Do you know that, by the way, the Shiur's Hayam is Zakeli Van Veyu, the Beis Hamikdash. It's full of the prophecy of the future. Rashi even points out that in the Shiur there's a lot of Bayish Shlishi in there. But the end, we add on this end to the Shira. Ba'alu Moshim Bahar Tzion Lishpait es Har Esa. So the Malbim says here, let's go all the way to the Malbim. Here there's a lot of things, but the Metzudas David says, Olu Moshim Bahar Tzion, Rotzainai Loimar, what did Avadia want to say? Hamoshiyim Shebahar Tzion, Hey Melech HaMashiach V'Sarav. We've just upgraded from Mashiach ben Yosef to Mashiach ben David. That's what happens in this pasuk. Kasher Yalu Ba'Isam Shemakor Machsavta Mehar Esav Lasers Ben Mishpat Amashay Roli Yisrael. When that Mishpat, the great judgment day in history, where the Bnei Esav are going to be called, how did you kill so many people? How did you make so many wars? How did you torture some people? How did you do gas chambers? All of Mashiach Artzion, that's where the Mashiach, and the Malbim says clearly, Mashiach ben David is going to create his Sarim and based in, and the world court will be in Jerusalem, and the world court will decide who's chayiv and who's not chayiv. That's what Alu Mashiach. Hema Melech HaMashiach V'Sarav Kasher Yalu Ba'Isam Shemakar Machshavta Mehar Esav Lasis Ben Mishpat Amasha Heireu LiYisrael. Oz Tiyan, it is on that day, by the big Mishpat, that Lashem HaMalucha. V'Haya Lashem HaMalucha. What does Malucha mean? Right? Malchus means that it's permeated the earth completely. Ein Melech B'Layam. Malchus, see, and return to Loimar, Az kol ha'umais yoidu b'malchusei v'yikablu le'lehai. What a throwaway line from the Metzudas David. That on that day there will come a time where everybody will just give up. Az kol ha'umais yoidu b'malchusei, in the Malchus of David HaMelech, the Malchus of Hashem, v'yikablu le'lehai, and they will accept HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There will be one God in this world. The world will become monotheistic, and everybody will serve that Hashem. So that's what we say every day. That's what we say before we get to the Yishtabach, such a oisphere of the Shira. But let me just, I'm over time. So let me just sum this up. We need, apparently this is what Ovadia taught us, we need the anger of Yosef. We need Menashe of Ephraim. Can it overspill to Mazid b'Mazid? It did. To Retzach b'Mazid? It did. But did it create Ritzicha b'Shogeg, which is probably often a bad thing also? It did. But why did Hashem, Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba b'trunya? Why not? I mean, just rid the Bnei Yosef of this terrible midah of Ritzicha. But the answer is, this is the whole Reb Tzadok here, because that Ritzicha and Kas, it comes from passion. So if you're like an angry person, if you're a intolerant person, kind of person that like everything gets on your nerves. I don't want to get too autobiographical here, but if you're like things bother you, let's put it that way. So things bother you, the idea is not to find some way, your therapist or medication to make it stop bothering you. Then you've dulled the entire creation of that person. The way to do it is to really figure it out and figure out, like, what am I supposed to do with this? And go become a Rosh Yeshiva.
An executioner.
Principal of a school, executioner. And this is all, by the way, what that Gemara means, what that Chazal says. If somebody's born in Mazel Madam, you're born in with this negative temperament, become a moil, become a shaykhid. But it's much obviously much deeper than that. It comes up in everybody's life, but that's the B'nai Yosef. That's who the B'nai Yosef are, and that's probably one of the main lessons of the whole Tzidkas Hatzadik, if not the whole Kisvei Reb Tzadok HaKohen, is that, like, don't argue with who you are. Become who you're supposed to be with it. These are tools, and just like having a great brain is a tool, having great feelings is a tool, and strong. You can get a lot of trouble with your brain too. But the idea is to use a good. Thank you very much. Good night.